All right, everybody, welcome to this, what I think is going to be an amazing webinar. We appreciate you joining us today. We know that you're very, very busy. My name is Lynn Allen, and I'm going to be your host for this webinar. And if you've ever tried to bring an Excel spreadsheet or a Word doc into Revit and hoping that you would get perfect formatting, and it didn't go like that, you're going to absolutely love this webinar. Or even more so, if you thought that you could actually edit that Excel spreadsheet or Word doc and have it update inside of Revit, and it didn't go like that, then you're also going to absolutely love this webinar. We have some amazing people here today to walk you through this amazing tool and to give you also some tips that have to do with Revit. And to start this off, I'm actually going to introduce you to one of the great people that's on with us today, and that is Paul Kuva. He's the Executive Vice President for Axiom. He's been with Axiom for about 5 years, and he's coming to you from Florida. Is that right, Paul? You guys are in Florida.
The Sunshine State.
Yeah. All right, you're on.
Okay, so I'd like to thank everybody for joining us today. We are about to have a pretty cool webinar. Our company is Axiom, and at Axiom, just for those of you who may not know us, we have been around for over 30 years. We originally made tools for MicroStation and moved on to AutoCAD. And a few years back at Autodesk University, we asked our public, what do you need from us? What can we develop for you? Because we make productivity tools, that's our specialty. And overwhelming feedback was like, hey, that product that you make for MicroStation and AutoCAD, which is Office Importer, can you make that for Revit? And we're like, let's give it a shot. So we took it back to our technical team, and our technical team produced what's known as Microsoft Office Importer for Revit. And it has had rave reviews, and we are happy to present it today, that's for sure. And at Axiom, our typical public is anywhere from small shops to Fortune 5 companies. Project scopes ranging from buildings to national assets like roadways, railways, nuclear plants, oil refineries. We work with so many government agencies, and I think all of the major Fortune size engineering firms that are using Office Importer for Revit have found it valuable. I see them increasing their licenses, and other teams from other offices are quite interested in it.
All right, and I just love this tagline anyway. We eliminate the worst part of your design jobs, which incidentally, if that happens to be your boss, they're not going to be able to help you out with that. Maybe for an added fee.
Oh, goodness.
So we have some great people, as I mentioned to you, on the call today, on the webinar, and we have someone fabulous, Aaron Smith, who's going to be answering questions for you today. He's the VP of Technology. I did a webinar with him and I, just a couple of months ago. Do you have anything you want to say, Aaron?
Just more and more questions. I'm here today to handle the questions that everybody types in during the webinar, and bring them on. Whatever questions you have, I'll make sure everybody gets an individual answer, and I'll also briefly ask, share a few questions at the end. Yeah, lay it on me.
That's good. That's good. Aaron just got a
Thanks,
new puppy.
Lynn.
Isn't that right, Aaron?
I did. I got a new puppy.
So he probably sounds a little sleepy. And then the next person I'd like to introduce you to, he's the one who's going to be doing the most of the presentation today. He's going to be showing us this amazing tool along with some other tips that have to do with Revit, and that is Frederick Kenaston. Now, we don't actually get to call him Frederick. We call him the Oracle. He's pretty darn amazing. He's actually done over 2,000 presentations, if you can imagine that. So we have high. The bar is high. The bar is very high, and yet this is only the second time he has been on camera for these presentations. So we do have to take it a little bit easy on him, but we're very excited that he is blessing us by being on camera today. And he's extremely talented. He's not just amazing technically, but he's also very musically inclined. He is a self-taught fingerstyle guitarist. He plays the mandolin. Hello, when was the last time you ran into somebody who plays the mandolin? Okay, maybe like hardly ever, right? And this is the most important part, is that he sent me a picture of his cat. So now you have you know all about him now. Meow. You know all about him now. So I am going to turn the time over to you, Frederick. Let's make you the presenter.
Okay.
I'll try to make this easy on you. I'm going to turn it over to you.
Sure. And then I will share my screen. All right, welcome everybody. My name is Frederick, also known as the Oracle. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you ways to import Word and Excel files or portions of them into Revit with Revit's own tools as the first major part of what I'm going to go over here. And some of these you might be familiar with, and I'm using, as you see on my screen right now, Revit 2020. And it has a new feature, which I'll go into in a little bit, which gives you some added an added capability that you didn't have in previous versions of Revit. So the first thing I'm going to do is notice I'm in a sheet here. It's just general notes sheet, nothing special about it. And on my Annotate tab, I'm going to click the text tool here, and I'm going to give it a text insertion point. I've got some sample Word and Excel files. First, I'm going to go into my Word file here. And you see this supported Word document formatting area. It's got a bunch of different formatting in it, different fonts, different bold characters, italic characters, underlined, some numbered, indented numbered paragraphs, and even some table data. So I'll highlight that, copy it, go back, and within this insertion point, I'll right click and I'll say paste. It then pastes the data, but notice that because of the font that I happen to be using in Revit, it changes the font from the Times font that I had in Word and then matches the font I'm using in Revit. So that's one way it loses some of the formatting for the text, particularly this plain text that you see here where it says like Revit imports. You'll also notice that the rest of the formatting also goes away. So the spaces between paragraphs is now gone as well. Now, this is one of the ways that people have gotten Word data into a Revit project. And once it's here, once they paste it in, they'll then put their cursor in and they'll reformat it painstakingly by adding, by pressing the Enter key to add spacing between paragraphs and things like that, and tweaking the settings as they go, like I'm showing you here. It'll get you the data in, and then you have to go back and zoom out a little bit here to then grab the edge of the text here and then wrap the text there. So you could adjust this as needed and then move it as needed to change its position in the sheet as necessary. And this is one way that you can get Word data into your Revit project. Again, with formatting that you're going to have to tweak a bit in order to get it to look even just somewhat like you need it to for the project that you're working on. Now, for Excel, it's a little different. If I tried the same operation, I'm going to go back to my text tool and give it a text insertion point, and I've got an Excel file here that I'll use. I'll highlight a section of it, right-click, do a copy. And when I go back, I'll right-click and I'll click paste, and nothing happens. That's right. With this particular option, unlike Word, I can't insert Excel data using the same sort of text tool insertion point into a project. So that limits what I can do with Word or I should say Excel when it comes to Microsoft Word or Excel. I can't do that same sort of thing with Excel. Now, there are other ways that people have in previous versions of Revit, including the current one, get data from Word or Excel into a Revit project. And I'll open up another sheet here. And this one is a data link from a AutoCAD file. So this is a spreadsheet. And in fact, if I go back to the spreadsheet that I had open in Excel, it is the same spreadsheet. But what I did is I went into an AutoCAD file and I placed it as an AutoCAD table. And then I went back to Revit, and under Insert, I used LinkCAD to then link that into that DWG file or AutoCAD file into this Revit sheet. Now, a couple things I'll point out. Notice the resolution of the text goes very odd. So it doesn't look quite as clean as it might otherwise. And when you compare that to what it looks like in AutoCAD, see how that's much cleaner there. And even when you go back to the original Excel file, it's a lot cleaner as well. So that's one thing you lose as far as the resolution. You also see that the colors of the filled cells here, this kind of goldenrod and gray compared to the, well, the goldenrod comes in right, but the gray is actually a light blue that you see here. So the colors can go a little bit odd as well. And in addition, when I scroll down a bit, and actually this goldenrod is just a little bit darker, notice that I've lost some border lines here around this totals area. So when I go back to my Excel file and scroll down to the bottom, this actually I think is this was an edited version of this particular Excel file, but here's the totals here. When I go back to my AutoCAD table, notice it's got the border lines around the total area there, but for some reason when I did the link CAD, it lost those particular border lines. So that's just some of the formatting issues that you might run into related to using link CAD in order to get Excel data into your Revit project. Now, you can also do the same thing with Word, and I've got another sheet here where I did that. And this is the same Word file that I showed you earlier where I did the text insertion point and then did the paste. But notice that the resolution of the text, the font is a bit off as well. When I go back to my AutoCAD file, notice here, see it's a very crisp presentation of the text. But when I used link CAD in this particular instance, similar to what I showed you in Excel, I lost resolution of my text so that it looks not quite as clean as it should for presentation and printing purposes in my Revit project. Now, the other thing that I was going to mention is PDFs. Now, in Revit 2020, they added, when you see here under Insert, this PDF option. Now, this didn't exist in Revit 2019 and earlier. And if you had a PDF file, you would normally have to create it from like a Word or Excel file and save it out as a PDF file, and then save it or convert it into a image format, and then use link image like you see here. Now, that was prior to Revit 2020. But in this particular version, you can use this PDF, link PDF or insert PDF, and you'll get instances like this. For example, in floor plans, what I did is I took a AutoCAD file and I saved it out as a PDF, and then I linked the PDF using that particular option. And when I zoom in, the resolution of the printout I did from AutoCAD was, I think, just 300 DPI or PPI. And so you see, as I zoom in further, it's going to lose some of the resolution. But at a certain point, it's good. It does very good line work, and higher resolution, if you save out the PDF file at like 600 points per inch or higher, you'll get a much better resolution when you then link the PDF into your project in this fashion. And that's with, again, a AutoCAD file saved out as a PDF file. I also did the same sort of thing with my sample Word file. And notice when I did that here, you see how clean that looks. This is a much better representation of the text when it comes to saving the Word file out as a PDF and then linking that in using the PDF option here for Insert PDF. Now, the only drawback is, though, for that tool is this, and I'm going to go into another sheet and I'll show you. If I click PDF here and I navigate out and I pick up my PDF file and click Open, notice it changes this. It gives me a dialog box and it says Import PDF. Here it shows me the 4 pages that this PDF is comprised of, and I can up the resolution as I need. This can also make things cleaner when it comes to what I showed you with the floor plan insert of the PDF file. You can increase the DPI, but the DPI increase here will be relative to what the DPI is of the PDF file that you saved out. So the higher both of those are, the better resolution you're gonna get when you link that into your Revit project. Now, because it shows me the different pages, I can click on them And when I do so and I click OK, it'll then place that one page. But that's the thing, I can only place one page at a time. The only other option that I have here as far as the pages is, notice it's got toggles between large and small thumbnail previews. So here I'm looking at the larger thumbnail previews, but still with that, it's limited as far as what I can do. So I can select this one, click OK, then it gives me a representation for the insert of where the page is going to fall. And then I click once, it pastes it or links it, and then I can make it bigger and smaller and move it around. And when I do, and I zoom in, again, this was just at the 72 DPI that I did. So I'm going to delete that, and I'm going to go back and insert it again. But this time I'm going to increase the DPI here. Let's do it 300 and do that one page. Paste again and resize it a bit. And when I zoom in, notice how much cleaner that is. But again, there's a drawback, two drawbacks to this related to data in the PDF file. One is, if you need to update that data, and let's say it came from an original Word document, you'll have to save the file out again, and then you'll have to relink it. In addition, it's only going to be one page that you're going to be able to insert at a time. That is kind of limiting, because depending on what you need to do, if you need to get all of the PDF file in, then for each page, you're going to have to link in each individual page one after the other. Again, it's better than it was in previous versions of Revit, because you can at least, you don't have to do another conversion in order to link it in as an image. You just go straight to PDF and link it in, and then you're good to go. And it'll give you better formatting than it would if you did the text insertion point, in particular with Word, and going that route. And also it will also eliminate a step where you have to paste it into or data into an AutoCAD file and then link it in with LinkCAD. So it does give you some advantages in some ways, but then it still leaves you the disadvantage if the data is changed, and you're going to have to redo the link and re-PDF the data and then bring it back in. So that's the ways with the current setup of Revit that you can bring in data from Word or Excel. And now I'm going to shift gears, and I'm going to go to my sheet here, my general notes sheet again. And I'm going to show you another faster, more pristine, perfect, easy way to get Word and Excel data into your Revit project with very exact formatting. And when you install the program, which here in the upper left on this Axiom ribbon panel, you'll see is named Microsoft Office Importer. These buttons that I'm putting my cursor over are the program. And it gives you the ability to import Word and Excel files or portions of them into your Revit project with very exact formatting. So I'll go to my sample Word file again. I'm just going to use this same section that I'd been pasting earlier that I showed you. And the reason being is because it's got lots of different formatting going on. Italics, different fonts, numbered paragraphs, indented numbered paragraphs, a bulleted paragraph, and table data as well. So I'll copy all that. I'll go back and I'll click paste. It analyzes the information, turns it into Revit objects. More on that in a moment. And then when I zoom in, there's the data. Now, a couple of things I'll point out. When I click on it here, you'll see it's a detail group. Now, Word, when we paste with Microsoft Office Importer into the Revit project, it's always going to be a detail group with text notes, and if there's line work, lines as well. In fact, I'll click here and I'll scroll down a bit to show you some of the other formatting came in, including the table data. Now, you might be asking yourself, well, now that you've got it in, what can you do with it? Well, you can grab it and you can move it to more precisely place it if you need to. In addition, it is linked back to the source file. Now, if I click this edit source button, it will find the source file. Pardon me here. Just give me just a second here. I got a little frog in my throat. Maybe it's time for a little tea here. All right. So if I go to my source file again and I insert a new line here. We'll just say this is a new line and save the file. Now when I go back to Revit, I'll click this Manage Link button and click Update. And based on the change I made in the source file, it will update the paste accordingly. And you see there, when I click Cancel, this is the new line is prominently displayed there. Now, that's the basics of pasting Word data in, and I could grab more pages and paste them in as needed. I'll go to another sheet here, and I'm going to grab my Excel file this time, or a portion of it. And this is the same one I showed you earlier. I'll just grab a section, right-click, do a copy, and again, if I did a text insertion point like I showed earlier on in the webinar, I wouldn't be able to even paste this data at all, but with Microsoft Office Importer, I can. I click Paste, and then I click once, and then Finish, and when I zoom in, you see the data. Now, one thing that's different about this compared to Word is that in a sheet, when I paste Excel, when I go into Settings, you'll see this data for pasting. It pastes Excel, this is applied to Excel in a sheet, by default as a schedule. It's a standalone schedule. It's not linked to any of the project data. And you have the option, though, of also pasting it as a detail group with text notes and lines. Now, it's unlike Word in that regard, in that when I paste Word into a sheet or anywhere else in a Revit project, and I'll show you some other areas I can paste into as well in just a second, Word is always going to be a detail group with text notes and if there's line work, lines. But Excel, when I paste it into a sheet at least, by default, it's going to be a standalone schedule, or I can paste it as a detail group with text notes and lines. But outside of a sheet, it's always going to be a detail group with text notes and lines. Now, in both cases, because Word and Excel, no matter where I paste them, whether they're a detail group or in the case of Excel here, a schedule, either way, doesn't matter. If I give this project to anyone, I do not have to include the source file, and they're going to see the paste that I made. In other words, the pastes don't rely on the source file after I've got the data pasted in. And as a result of giving people or someone the project with the paste in it, if you do not include the source file, it doesn't matter. They're not going to get any odd link errors or anything like that, letting you saying that, hey, it can't find the source file. So it's a clean, pristine, all-in-one sort of deal where you paste it in, that's the paste, and wherever the project goes, that's where that pasted data goes. Now, a couple other things I'll show you related to Excel and the Manage Link dialog box, which I used just a little bit earlier, is this gives you a couple other things. One, this is the source file, and if that file name changes or if it's moved on disk, you can click this select button, navigate out and pick it up again, and it'll reset the link to the file. You'll also see that it says to update automatically when the project opens. Now, in the Revit version of this program, and there's a MicroStation version, AutoCAD version, and now a Revit version, which is some months over a year old now. The default is when you open the project in Revit, it will prompt you if it sees paste that can be updated and give you the option of updating the paste, yes or no. You can modify that behavior in the settings, which I'll show you more on in a little bit. You also see here top left cell, bottom right cell. That's for instances like this. If I click Edit Source and I insert a new column, for example, right here, and save the file, if I then go back to Revit and I update the paste, you'll see here my concrete curb and gutter column on the far right is going to be pushed out of what was the original pasted area. So these fields allow you to adjust the scope of the paste on the fly to pick up not only the new data, which you see already, but also then the data that was part of the paste initially as well. You could also use these fields to adjust the scope of the paste by expanding it or contracting it, or even just moving the scope of the paste if you needed to do anything like that at all. So I'll cancel that, and now I'm going to go into a drafting view. And for a while now, not only have we been able to paste into sheets, but also into drafting views and legends as well. So I'm going to undo my one column here, and I'm going to grab the swatch of my Excel file here and paste it into my drafting view. And I just put some reference planes here just to guide the placement of it. And one of the reasons I'm pasting here is to show you that Excel outside of a sheet is always going to be a detail group when I select it here with text notes and lines. And you see we also can't honor colors or filled cells here when it pastes as a detail group. And that would always be the case with Word, no matter where we paste it. The only place for Excel, when we paste it, can we honor colored text or filled cells is when we paste as a schedule in a sheet, just so you know. But if I make changes to the text or reformat the lines, that sort of thing, as far as like adjust the column width or the row height, then and save the file, I can still update the paste for Excel here in the drafting view and a legend, just like I showed you before. In addition, when I go to this import areas drafting view, in addition to sheets, drafting views, and legends, about, I think, 11, 12 weeks ago, we added the ability to also paste into floor plans, area plans, ceiling plans, and engineering plans as well. Now with that done, I'm going to go into the next area of the program, which is this list of links dialog box. And this lists the current Microsoft Office importer links in the file. One of the things I'll point out here is notice it has a status area column, and it'll tell you if a paste is out of date or not. This is based on the file modification date and time. And if it sees a difference in that compared to the date and time that the paste was made, it'll tell you if the paste is out of date or not. Now, you can, if you need to, update any paste that you want by selecting one or more as needed. Click the update button, and based on changes made, it will then update those pastes. This one I've got here, which is, quote, 3 months out of date, I'll just go ahead and update it as well. And there you see, all of them are now up to date. In addition, there's a couple other things you can do in this dialog box. You can open the Manage dialog box for whatever file you've got selected here. You can edit the source file. Source folder will open Windows Explorer and take you to the folder that this particular file is located in if you need to go to that folder for whatever reason. And update, like I mentioned, you could pick or choose one or more and update them. And delete, I'm going to use, you can use to delete any paste in your file. Now, the reason I did that is because that's going to clean things up for the next major feature of the program that I'm going to show you. I like to call this the magic part of the show. When I go to settings and under pasting, you see here it's got split paste into columns. And with that on, I also have access to this next option, which is repeats Excel header of so many rows. I'm going to put 5 here, and then I'll turn that setting off and save my settings for the moment, because I can adjust this on the fly after I start my paste. I'll show you what I mean. So first I'll start with Excel. I'll grab all of my Excel file, which is about 4 pages of information, do a copy, go back and I'll click paste. Again, it analyzes the information, turns it into Revit objects, and then I'll click once. And then on this secondary dialog box, I'll click this button to split the paste. And when I do so, notice that it gives me a representation of where the columns are going to fall. If I move up or down, it adjusts the height of the columns. If I move left or right, it'll adjust the spacing between the columns. And then with a second mouse click, it pastes the data. And then on the fly, I can turn on this repeat Excel header of so many rows on, and then click redraw. And it's going to copy the header information over any column that's split off, like you see right there. When I zoom in, there's the paste. Now, I can also do the same thing for Word, and I'll go to another sheet to do that. And my Word file, just like my Excel file, is about 4 pages of data, so I'll highlight all of it. And it's got another, some more table data and some lettered paragraphs and things like that, just to show some different formatting. Also some superscript and subscripted text as well. And then with this button, I'll split the paste. I'll just kind of eyeball where the columns are going to fall. Click finish. And when I zoom in, you'll see it's got superscript, subscript, the table data that I mentioned earlier, more table data. And when I scroll down a bit, even more table data and lettered paragraphs, indented, numbered paragraphs, and bulleted paragraph as well. Now, this feature is very powerful. And when I showed this to a prospect here about 10 months or so ago, and he told me the following. He's now a customer, actually. And the reason why is when I showed him this with Word in particular, he said, look, I have a customer that requires that I make a 128-page Word file, which contains specifications, part of my Revit project sheets. When I showed him this, he said, what I want to be able to do is lay out all of this 128 pages of Word file into one sheet, maybe using reference planes to guide exactly, you know, the spacing between the columns when I paste them in. And then he said, I want the program to be able to do this. I want to grab columns that are split off, cut them, and then go to a new sheet and then paste them in. And when I do so, I want them to be part of the same big paste. In other words, if I then have to go back and adjust something in the source Word file of the specifications and update it a bit, I then want to be able to come back to Revit and say update the paste, and no matter what other sheets I cut and pasted columns of the paste to, they would still update as if they were part of the one big paste. And so we did that for him, and actually that's actually what made him become a customer. So that works for both Word files and Excel files in Sheets only, at least currently. And that's just one, like in addition to the split pasting the columns feature, which we also call column flow.
Actually, Frederick, you can do it in drafting views as well, and I'm pretty sure Legends and Plans now, but that's all new.
Then that's new to me. Thanks for letting me know.
We're constantly expanding these things. Absolutely, man.
That is correct. Well, good. That's good to know. So now, with that, that's the major features of the program. Now I'm going to go into the settings, and this will answer questions that some of you have probably already thought of and might even already asked Aaron. And in some cases, though, it might answer questions that you hadn't thought of yet as well. So here, this dialog box, the settings dialog box, one thing that I'll point out in the title bar is this is the name of the currently loaded settings file, Office RB.ini. You can adjust settings for different things, which as I go into the different categories, I'll show you here. And then after you do so, you can set things up for different specifications for different projects. Once you do, you can go File, Save Settings As, and you can give it a name like a project number or a customer name. And then when you need to work on that particular project or do the work for that particular customer, you can go File, Load Settings, and then load the appropriate settings file with the settings for text and scale factors and things like that that you'd set up earlier. So now in the text category, the font by default is going to use the same fonts as the source document. So that'll get you the most exact match as far as what's going on in the source files that you paste. But any font that's available to you in Revit, you can paste with. For example, let's say it was Bell MT. Now, if you do use a default font, in order to make sure you get the most exact match, you want to make sure that you then use that same font in Word or Excel. That way, you'll prevent font mapping issues, which you might run into due to differences in character height and width and character spacing. Scale, this is a default scale factor that I just use for demo purposes, and it's just a ratio of the font points in Word or Excel to the measurement in the Revit project, which in this case is inches. But most Revit users bypass this completely, and they use this map text feature. Now, this allows you to map specific point sizes from Word or Excel to specific Revit text sizes. For example, you notice that 10-point text here is set to 3/16 right now, but if you need to change that, you can just click in here and edit it. By the way, if it's a metric project, you can utilize and then edit the metric text sizes, just so you know.
That's great that you added that, Frederick, because someone had just asked about metric.
I know, and
awesome.
Thank you very much.
Maybe you saw it. Okay.
I get that question a lot when I show this. So after you've edited it, I'll go File, Save Settings, and now what'll happen is this. Every time I paste with this particular settings file loaded, it will always map 10-point text to 3/32. So that way, once I set it for the particular work I'm trying to do, I don't have to worry about it again. Now, also under pasting, this is where you split paste into columns. And then under linking, by default, the way the program has been designed, even from the early days in the early MicroStation version, which has been around since 1996, actually. So this functionality in 3 CAD platforms now has been around since 1996. It links back to the original document. And then it sets it to update automatically when the project opens. Now, I'm going to explain why it's set that way and why it works that way. When we were first doing research for this functionality, most of the design and engineering areas told us that they would often get Word files and Excel files from other areas like management or finance that they needed to make part of their projects. And when they did so, those same entities, management and finance, and maybe other areas as well too, would often update that data throughout the life of a project. Based on that, the people that we spoke with told us that they didn't want to run into a situation where one's changes, let's say in the source file, might overwrite changes that maybe they did directly in the CAD or project file. So if it could go both ways, it might cause a problem, and they didn't want that to be a problem at all. So based on that, we, after doing some more surveying, we made it a one-way flow where the pastes that we make are a reflection of what's going on in the source files. And that way, if you then make a change, or if you try to, and you could, in the project or the CAD files, as the case may be, if you then do an update on the paste based on changes in the source file, it's going to overwrite your changes in the project or CAD file. So it is a one-way flow. Just bear that in mind. It is designed to be a reflection of what's going on in the source file, and then maintain that link in order to then update the paste according to changes that are made in the source file. Now, under updating, again, the Revit version default is to ask before updating any automatic paste. The reason, and that's actually different than the MicroStation AutoCAD version, and the reason is Revit users wanted more control over that when they first opened their project. Because they sometimes have told us that they want to be able to push data up to a central project file or pull data from before they do anything else with the file that they're working on. As a result, they wanted to be prompted on whether to update the paste or not. And if they said no, then later they could still go and manually update them through the Manage Link dialog box or List of Links dialog box as well. Now, you could also set, and these settings are a settings file, not a per link option, just so you know. You could also say update the automatic paste without asking. This happens to be the default for the AutoCAD and MicroStation version. You could also use this in Revit if you wanted to. And again, it's a settings file setting. So next time you open the project in this particular case, it would just update the paste without any intervention from you. Now, lastly, you could also say don't update any automatic paste at all. And that gives you the most control, where you just open it and it just leaves them as they were last pasted. But you could still then manually update them through the Manage Link dialog box or the List of Links dialog box as well, if you needed to and when you needed to. So that is smart importing for Revit, and that was the information I wanted to cover. So with that, I guess I'm going to shift control over this to Lynn and see where we go next. I think there might be some questions that she might direct Aaron to cover or something like that.
Okay, you should be able to, can you see me?
I don't see you yet.
Not yet.
Oh. I just told it to see me. People can see you. They can see my screen. Oh, there I am. Sorry.
Okay.
Technology. There I am.
That was you.
Hello.
Yeah.
Thank you to the Oracle. We appreciate that.
He doesn't respond to Frederick anymore. It's just the Oracle. It was hard at first. It took about a week. And then we got
I'm
used
not
to it.
allowed, like I said, I'm not allowed to actually say his name. It's just the Oracle. I have respect. And I saw there were a lot of questions that came in and a lot of answers. Thank you, Aaron, so much. But let's see if we don't want to do some live questions. I know Aaron picked some good questions.
Sure,
So we'll just take a few, so don't tune out, don't leave us. We have some other exciting things to share with you.
I just got 4 more, but
just a couple of questions.
Totally. It's hard to pick from them. I mean, I have one job and that's it, but it's still hard to choose. Peter, very early on, I know. Peter early on asked, what versions of Revit does your software work with? So Frederick, what versions?
Very good question. So it's Revit 2017 up through and including Revit 2020.
Fantastic. Good. And I also know that, and I'll add that when a new version of Revit comes out, our goal is to be ready on the day it's out. So Revit's out, we have a version there already. Usually before, actually, and then once it's finally done, boom, we just say we're done. Next question from Chris. Sometimes these things come in early before, and then you cover it, but this is a really good one, so I'll bring it up, even though Frederick showed this a bit. What if my data, they say Excel or Word, doesn't fit inside of a single border? Like your example of 130 page, whatever Word document, Frederick, like general
Right.
notes, that kind of thing?
Well, you would lay it out on one sheet, and you could set up a template for a sheet. In fact, this is one customer I know of does this. He creates a template for a sheet and then creates makes a sheet from it that has reference planes already laid out in it to guide the placement of an entire Word file, how many ever pages it is, split into columns across it. Then once it's laid out, you grab sheets just like I showed you, or I
Just cut them and
earlier.
paste them, right?
Just select them, you cut them, you go to a new sheet and paste them in. And when you do that, it still is linked as one big paste. So then when you update the Word file or Excel file, as the case may be, later, it will then update all of those columns as part of one big paste still.
Fantastic. Thank you. I'm picking, it's a hard choice for this last one, but I'm gonna go with one from John. And Frederick, I know you showed that a person can change which rows are brought in and which columns and stuff like that. But he asks a really good question, which is, can you just automatically have new rows come in? Like they add some rows? I mean, the answer is yeah, if you do a named range, or if you do a named range, it comes in. Also, if you just select the whole spreadsheet, we naturally bring the whole thing in, which is great. So cool, good, thank you, John. That was a good question, and that's that's the short list.
Is that a wrap?
30, 40 under questions, but I answered them individually. Yeah.
Awesome.
All right, great.
I want to thank everybody for asking questions. I really, I only got one thing to do during this webinar, so I need your questions.
Cool.
And if I'm not mistaken, that last question you asked Frederick, but you actually just answered it yourself.
Yeah.
Right. Which is fine.
Yeah, just one. I want to take one.
Because I know you know a lot about the product too. What's behind you, Aaron? Is that like a...
It's a bookcase, Lynn.
No, not the bookcase.
What's that? That is half of a piñata.
Half of a piñata?
Half of a piñata.
Like,
I think
like a zombie piñata?
Maybe a zombie piñata. It might be. Yeah, it could be a portal piñata. Like the other half of that piñata could be anywhere else, sticking out of a wall somewhere. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. It's kind of a mystery what happened to the other half, I guess, of the piñata.
We may never know.
So thank you very much, everybody, for your great questions, for the great answers, and let's keep going. All right, so Paul, I understand that you have a poll that you would like to ask the audience.
Absolutely. Here at Axiom, one of the best things we can do is get feedback from everybody, and I'm going to put a poll up really quick for you. And if you'd be so kind as to just give us a few answers to these questions real quick, I'll leave it up for a minute. And if you'd like pricing for the product that you just got demonstrated, if you would like a live one-on-one demonstration that speaks to your specific project needs or business case, we're glad to do that individually or for a team. If by chance you want a recording of this webinar, we're glad to send it to you, and you could also distribute it to your team. Often people that are on these calls realize they're in the right place and establish themselves as opinion leaders in their office or innovators in their office. In fact, I've heard that using our productivity tools in multiple cases has been a way to establish themselves in a way that differentiates them from the average person in their office. I mean, they're creating innovation and a way that helps drive down design costs and make their designs more aesthetic. And if you'd like the product information sheet, just let us know. We're glad to send all these out to you and help you in any way we can. We just want you to find value in what we offer. We encourage you to try it. Also, you can get a trial of our tool for no cost, no credit card required. We can arrange that for you too. Just let us know what you need, and we're here to help. I'm going to close the poll. So if you have any last minute answers, just put them in there. Otherwise, I'm going to close the poll. All righty.
One thing I want to add, Paul.
Go ahead, Frederick. Yeah.
Related to the trial is for a limited amount of time, but it's the fully functioning program for the length of the trial. There's no limit on its functionality at all.
That's an amazing point, Frederick. I have to tell you, that's impressive. All right. So I'm going to close the poll now. Thank you all for answering. I appreciate it. Once again, I just wanted to thank everybody for sharing time with us today. We have a pretty intense website that's just at AxiomInt.com, and it's filled with all kinds of resources. We have been in business for over 30 years. We have a ton of webinar videos, content, blogs. You can see all of our tools, and our productivity tools. We have over probably 30 of them at this point, and we make tools for MicroStation and AutoCAD as well.
Oh, thanks everybody for coming.
So definitely download the trial. You can go to axiomint.com and you can download the trial. Don't take our word for it. Try it for yourself.
Exactly.
And I want to thank you, all of you who joined us today, because I know you're very, very busy. We appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedules to join us. And thanks to all the presenters, and have a great rest of the week.